Welcome to A Breath of Fresh Career, Season 2, Episode 11. I'm joined here by Alex Yoder. Alex is the CEO of LeadSpace. LeadSpace helps companies take back control of their marketing and sales data with their leading intelligence B2B customer data platform. So you guys are a CDP. Alex, he's a husband, a father of 2 daughters. Very important to note that he's a dog owner. An avid outdoorsman and loves his cups of coffee. It's funny because when I first started working with Alex years ago, the time for me to connect with him was during his morning commute before he stopped to get his coffee. So I'd love to ask you this question to break the ice here a little bit. Tell me about what's going on with coffee these days and Alex Yoder. What are you drinking?
First of all, let me say it's great to be here and thanks for inviting me. Yeah, coffee and caffeine play a huge role in my life still. I've done my best to kind of try and gear it back. Probably at my peak, I was thinking about this when you were doing the intro. There was a point where I was talking to my doctor and he asked me how much coffee I drink a day. And I think there was a point, it was about 12, 13 years ago, where I probably had about 16 cups of coffee a day and about 3 Diet Cokes in the afternoon.
Oh, man.
So, I've tried to really gear back and successfully done that. But at this point, I'm back to about 2 quad espressos each morning. So it's on my Starbucks app. I work in New York, and I get off the subway, push the app, swing by Starbucks, pick it up. It's a quad espresso with 1 raw sugar. Everybody knows me, and we're all friendly because of the regular cadence.
But they're like, here's this crazy guy that's going to drink a quad espresso. So a quad espresso is 4 espressos?
Yeah, basically.
Essentially, with the raw sugar. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny, actually, just on that topic, and, I know we're just chatting here, but at one point in my career, I think it was in the late 90s, I took a job in Minneapolis, and I was living in Portland at the time, so I drove out to Minneapolis with all my stuff, and I literally got a small thermos and went to Starbucks and had him fill it with espresso, and ended up being about 16 shots, I think, of espresso.
Wow.
And I chewed tobacco at the time as well. And so between the tobacco and the espresso, I was set. I was ready to go. I've always had kind of an internal chemistry where things just don't have much of an effect on me. So,
okay. Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah. Hey, really quickly on the coffee note, not to throw a plug, but I've been drinking this stuff called Four Sigmatic. It's their Lion's Mane blend. It's a mushroom blend. It's unbelievable. It's kind of nutty. It doesn't taste like I'm drinking mushrooms at all. And I drink my coffee black, so I'm not like putting any sugar or cream or anything in there. But man, the stuff is it's just, it helps you focus. It's like brain power. It's crazy stuff. And I'm doing an espresso this morning. We have an espresso at the house, and I just grabbed one of those to kick this podcast off. But really interesting story about Four Sigmatic and his coffee experience is my dad from Florida, 77 years old. Yes, from Florida. He's living down in Florida now. Was with us last week, and he's like, you making coffee this morning? And I'm like, sure. So I make him this Four Sigmatic coffee and didn't tell him what it was, right? Because he'd be like, mushroom coffee, what the hell's wrong with you? And I noticed not only his movement, right, was better, but his brain function was better. He was sharper. He only had it 2 days because the 2 other days that he was here, he had doctor's appointments. So he got up and went out and had his, Dunkin' brand, Dunkin' coffee, Dunkin' Donuts.
But you noticed a difference in him after just a couple of days of drinking it?
Immediately. Huh. It's incredible. You got to try this, man, especially a guy like yourself who's like, presenting to boards and constantly on the go. I mean, here's the deal. You're always on. Like I've never met you. I've never seen you sick. I've never seen you down. Like you're always on. And that's part of what makes you you. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But like this stuff, it's really incredible. So Now we got the coffee thing out of the way. We got to talk fly fishing as well. I mean, a move from Boulder, Colorado to New York. You're kind of splitting your time. You gotta, yeah, sure. Westchester, northern New York. There are definitely some rivers and streams that you could fish in. Connecticut as well. Have you been fishing at all?
No, I do have to say, I mean, with this job, there's not a lot of time for sport. I'm in New York, kind of Monday through Thursday, and then I spend the weekends in Boulder. And as you said, I mean, I have a dog named Gordon. He's my best friend, and when I'm home, I'm spending time with Gordon and hopefully my wife, and we're out. Gordon and I are out walking and doing that kind of stuff, and so yeah, unfortunately, there's just not a lot of time for sport right now. I do have a really good friend from college. We've kind of made it a regular cadence to go on kind of a 4-day fishing trip every September, October. And we usually go someplace like Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, BC. And so we'll probably do that again this year. But if it's kind of concentrated like that, I can get it in and having a guide, untangle the line and know where to fish and things like that, definitely increases the rate of effectiveness.
Totally. Knowing where to fish and what to put on the end of the line is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely huge. And I'm not like a big fly fisherman, although I have a couple rods and that stuff. But let's talk about LeadSpace.
Yeah.
What do you guys do? What do you offer?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, we're a CDP, and I mean the good and bad about CDP is it's kind of like in the marketplace, it's got a lot of hype around it. It's like the next DMP. Okay, everybody, for the last 10 years thought I need a DMP to solve all my customer data problems, and now cookies are going away, and everybody talks about needing a CDP. So why do I need a CDP? What's the point of it? I mean, there are a lot of different flavors of CDP and a lot of different things that companies do with them. But our approach is very unique in the sense that we focus exclusively on B2B enterprises. So there really are no other CDPs that do that today exclusively. And, one of our kind of core elements or philosophies is we're completely data agnostic. So we're not like other, CDPs that are focused on selling our proprietary data set. We basically can and do suck in, third-party data from any source or provider that you can imagine, which in the B2B universe, there's a reasonably defined universe of B2B third-party data sources. So we've licensed and ingested all of it and indexed all of that universe. Then we take the first-party data and we structure it in a way that's meaningful to the enterprise, and we combine it, and we provide intelligent customer profiling, and that's all a lot of kind of data garbage talk. But at the end, the point is it makes marketing and sales and actually customer service just significantly more effective and efficient, because we're able to, for instance, if a lead comes into a website, you can instantaneously know if it's an existing customer or if it's really a new lead. If it is an existing account, but it's not somebody that you've spoken to in that account before, we can enrich that and provide context around not only the company, but also where this person sits in the company in the hierarchy and
who that person is. Yeah.
And so we get buying signals. We route real-time leads in an effective way and match leads to accounts. And we use first-party data for audience development and significantly more effective demand generation in media channels. So it's really a continuum, if you will, of a single spot to hold all of your customer data that you can then use to proliferate through engagement platforms like ABM or email or media or what have you.
Got it. Okay. Makes sense to me. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in data in a second. But so you're the CEO over there. What's the day in the life like? What's your role all about as CEO? A lot of people are like, oh, this guy's pulling the puppet strings, but I know that's not your style. So walk us through what you do on a day to day.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, and it's interesting that you say pull the puppet strings. I have some really good friends that are like, EVPs of sales at companies and stuff, and they've made comments like, God, can't wait till I'm a CEO so I can make all the decisions. And I mean, the reality of a CEO job is A, you're not making all the decisions. B, you still have a boss. I mean, my kids said to me one time when they were a lot younger, like, I thought you were the boss. And it's like, no, everybody has a boss. And then I think on top of that, in the context of not pulling the strings, I mean, to be candid, my job at the highest level is simple. On a day-to-day basis, it's complex. And what I mean by that is, my job is to provide absolute clarity about the vision and direction and strategy of the company. So I have to simplify that, refine it, and get it on a single rail so people can start to do their jobs more effectively. The next layer down from that is I have to be involved in the business so I can understand what are the barriers to people's success. Because I firmly believe that people do not come to work with a desire to fail. They want to be successful, and it's a leader or a manager's job to create that clarity and remove the barriers so they can be successful. And I spend a lot of time on that every single day. And then the final piece is the part that actually, if you've done the first two, isn't that hard, which is hold people accountable. And if you've done the first two things, in my mind, my side of the street is reasonably clean. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to go hold people accountable to something that isn't defined or I haven't enabled, for success. But if I've done that, those first two things, and then, for whatever reason, it's not a good fit for them, or maybe they're burned out or whatever it is, then, we have a conversation about that. And it sounds stupid and hyper simplistic, but that's the formula to success because, again, I've worked for leaders and managers that jump into the business, get all over your back and start telling you how many ways you're screwing up. And they haven't provided any clarity or definition of what the company's supposed to be doing and what my job and role is in that. And it just creates, I think, frustration and gets people down. So that's kind of at the highest level the way that I think about it and focus it. And then, especially for a company like ours that isn't massive, every exec's got to be in the business. I mean, you got to roll up your sleeves. You got to be in deals with the salespeople to see what customers are asking for and understand it. You have to be in product development and strategy meetings so that you understand what they're building and what the gap is between the definitions the product team is creating and the R&D team is wanting to build. What the marketing team is taking and what path and how they're talking about what we're doing so I mean I think it's hard for people to understand and appreciate. Since I'm in Boulder right now, I'm in kind of a shared office space. And the problem I have is I'm on the phone, literally, Zoom or whatever, but for 10 hours a day. And I have a loud voice, so I have to go in a little phone booth. So, it's not romantic. Yeah.
10 hours a day in a phone booth. You are Superman.
Not this romantic
you
thing
are
people
Superman.
think it is. It's like, oh, the CEO, I'm going to my big corner office in the Crystal Palace, and my executive assistant hands me my paper with my schedule for the day, and I say, fix this, do that, and people jump. And I mean, in smaller companies that are evolving and growing rapidly, you got to be in the business and you have to be talking to people and engage with them. And COVID added complexity to that, but we're at a point now where I'm traveling a lot again and I'm out seeing customers and stuff.
That's great. By the way, how has the travel back and forth been? Everybody asks
Yeah, you
questions
mean
about
between
that.
like Boulder and New York, or just?
Yeah, with
It's.
flying
I
and
mean,
airports.
candidly, outside of wearing a mask in the airport and on the plane, I mean, it's just like it used to be. I'm shocked. I mean, I went to New York in February. It was pretty quiet then. Like I was in Soho, and it was. I mean, midday there was a couple people kind of on the street, guy out walking his dog and stuff. It was kind of like a rainy Sunday morning at about 7 a.m. But now, I mean, flights are packed, airports are packed, every seat is taken. You know, the airlines are back to trying to buy people out of their seats because they've overbooked. I mean, it's crazy, but I mean, sincerely, I mean, I feel safe. I'm not. I literally had no like health concern or anything like that, um, and it's good. I mean, travel's great. It's nice to be back. I think there's a little bit of, and I understand they were practically out of business for a while, but it seems like the airlines are back to gouging a little bit because, they have dynamic pricing, and if
Because they
there's
can.
demand for a flight, man, prices go up fast.
One of the things I really love about you and your story, Alex, is your story, right? And it's how you got your start, man. Like, I think when I first met you, I just pulled up your LinkedIn because I wanted to make sure I kind of quoted this. You were like the VP of sales at WebTrends. I think when I met you at eTail or NRF or on a call, I don't really remember. It goes back a long ways. It didn't start there, right? You didn't
Right.
start as the VP of sales. So can you just walk us through how you got your start in this industry and kind of your DNA and
I
where you come
mean,
from?
yeah, I'll do my best not to drag it out too long, but no, I mean, I think, I'm
I mean, you
I'm
started
in
off
my
as a
mid
sales guy, if
50s,
I
and
remember,
so I'm
right?
like, and I think this is true for people and for companies. I tell people all the time, like, everybody wants to know about different CDPs, and I said, just look at how they got started. I think their DNA is ultimately who they are. You can't change that. I mean, they may put a different face on it, and they may focus in some different areas, but companies that are characterize themselves as CDPs today that started out as tag management. I mean, I'm not saying they're not a CDP, but what they're really good at is collecting and aggregating digital data, as an example, because they started as a tag management solution. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's the same thing with people. I mean, I have the good fortune of I have parents that literally, I'm trying to think now. I think my parents have been married for like 59 years now. I mean, they started young. They started without
Wow.
anything or any money, and that's been very formative for me. And I still ask them once in a while how the heck they put up with me when I was younger. But professionally, I mean, I went to a liberal arts college. I didn't study business or anything. I had no idea what I wanted to do out of school, and the first 12 years of my career, actually, I was a commodity trader. So I worked for Mitsui, a big Japanese conglomerate, for a long time, and then for a company called Souffle Negos, which was a French company that was doing some international trading, and I was trading commodities, and like every career,
Like
mostly
frozen orange
grains and
juice?
oilseeds. So
I'm
yeah,
Well, I
I
was kind of
mean,
joking about
that's
trading
what it
places,
was. I
but
mean, it was wheat,
yeah.
barley, corn, soybean oil. I traded for a period of time this thing called cottonseed, which they actually feed to dairy cattle. Um, so it was a really fun, interesting, dynamic, strenuous job. And, I could talk forever just about that job, but I won't. But I started as a trainee. I was just calling places trying to buy grain from these small country elevators at the same price that everybody else was trying to buy it from them. And the only way to do it is build relationships of trust and continuity and reliability. And, I tried my hardest to do that. And so I moved up and, ended up learning how, and I was trading futures and options and, ocean freight and a whole bunch of different things. But it reached a point where, after 12 years, I mean, the reality of it is there are not a lot of old traders. And, I was in my early 30s at this point, and my wife and I literally had just had our first child a couple months before, and I'm like, I'm done with this industry. I'm burned out. I'm fed up. I've kind of learned what, my brain had, I'm not 100% motivated by money. I like solving difficult problems. So my brain had kind of, done what it needed to do in terms of, learning about it. And I'm like, I'm changing industries. And again, my wife was working, but we had just had our first child and stuff. And anyway, make a long story short, I got into technology sales because sales was kind of the only thing that anybody could kind of connect what I had done in the past with, seeking. I was fortunate to do really well in it. And part of that fortune was just, I was probably older and maybe a little bit more seasoned, we'll call it. I don't want to say mature, but seasoned than a lot of people that were in tech sales. Because I'd basically run a business. I'd run a P&L. I'd travel all over the world. I ran risk management. I had to inventory management. There's all these things that I had to do as a commodity trader. And so, I was fortunate to be very successful in sales, and my approach and MO and things like that was really, I hated at that point in my life being called a salesperson because, I grew up thinking, oh, that's kind of like the used car sales picture was in my mind. And I want to try and help people solve problems.
Yep.
And again, my entire life, nothing I've done have I ever really gone kind of the easy path and gotten an education in it. I learned on the job. So anyway, I was a salesperson. I became a sales manager. I then became the director of strategic accounts or partnerships, I guess, alliances, and managed partnerships with companies like Akamai and stuff, and grew those relationships. I then built our account management and kind of farming team, and then ultimately became a VP of sales. And I reached a point where I'd been offered a CEO job, and so the company that I was working for at the time said, well, if you're going to leave, we'd like to offer you the CEO job of this company. And that was WebTrends. And, I was the CEO for 5 years. And again, in that instance, like I had literally never been to a board meeting before. I was the CEO of this company. So I had to really learn fast. And I had to learn what they wanted to know, what the information, and it was kind of classic, like naivety. I walked into the board meeting thinking I had to struggle with all these things and accomplished all these things and done all these hard things, and they're just going to give me a pat on the back. And it was a rude awakening in the sense that they, none of that stuff mattered. They wanted the numbers, they wanted the results, they wanted the outcomes, and so I really had to start connecting my activities with the outcomes, and that's kind of how I got into that. And since then I've been the CEO of I guess now this is the fourth company, and I prior to this I worked at a large global media company running their analytics practice. It was about 150 million in revenue when I left. The analytics practice was,
Wow.
I try to be humble. I don't try to. That's who I am. I probably make a mistake sometimes by not being self-promotional enough, but
You got my gears going a little bit now too, right? In keeping with a breath of fresh career, we talked about growing and kind of how you've become who you are today. And you mentioned, you were learning as you were going. You'd never been in a board meeting. So, what do you wish you had known when you started out? Is absolutely a question that I'm interested in here.
Oh man, it's a perplexing question because there's so many answers to it, honestly, Justin. And I'm not joking about that. there's so many things I wish I had known. I mean, there's the old saying of, youth is wasted on the young. I mean, even hearing myself say that, it almost brings tears to my eyes when I think about my own, 30 some odd year career and the things that I've wished that I knew and didn't have to learn the hard way. But I think, I think the most simple and direct, and it's a little philosophical, but answer to that is, and it's something that I try to advise people on or give them guidance on, is understand and know and have confidence in how you learn. You need to know for yourself how you learn. And I think that's critical, because when I look back on my career, the way I learn is hands-on. I mean, I get thrown into the deep end with ankle weights on, and I have to figure out how to either, at least stay above the surface and hopefully swim laps. And, not everybody's like that, and that's totally okay. There are people that learn by going to school. There are people that learn by reading business books. You've sent me a couple that I didn't read, but no, but I think everybody has their own approach. And I think the most important thing is in life is be true to that approach of how you learn. And the reason for that is it will save you a lot of time and frustration and kind of second guessing yourself. Because I spent a lot of time second guessing myself. Why don't I know this? Mm-hmm. Crap, I should know this. Or, this person obviously figured this out. And, in a lot of cases, it's people that went to business school and got an MBA and they had that approach under the belt. And, maybe that's a faster approach for certain people. It's not how I learned. I didn't really like being in school that much. It was kind of boring, and I don't know, the idea of like working my tail off to get an A versus just kind of coasting through and getting a B, that equation didn't make sense in my brain. But when I get into work, like mm-hmm. I'm all in. I mean, I'm all in for success.
Man, I saw a video clip, and honestly, I can't remember who it was. And this was like a couple weeks ago, and it was like, this woman asking the CEO, and it'll pop in my head who it was in a minute when I tell you the story. But this woman said, what do you think about 4-year college? And he literally said, and I personally don't believe in this, because I think it's a great experience for people, and it teaches responsibility, and it teaches so much. And the friends that you build in, the 4 years that you're away in college or more, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Obviously when you're talking doctors and lawyers and all that good stuff, it's a necessity. I definitely want a doctor that attended medical school. You know what I mean? And a lawyer, by the way, that went to law. But he said it's the biggest waste. It's the biggest waste of money today, because it's so expensive to attend 4 years of college right now that it will take the time to make that money to essentially pay for it doesn't make sense. It used to make sense when it was $12,000 a year. Yeah. But it's now it's 80. And, and by the way, this is I'm not trying to tell any kids that might be listening to not go to college. Absolutely, do it. But like, if you're great at something, or, or the trades as an example, and you don't need to go to 4 years of college, and you can get out. My nephew, he's making over $100,000 a year as a welder. That's what he does, and he just got out of welding school. Anyway, long story short, I love the fact that you mentioned understand. So let me just finish the story. So the CEO was like, the woman's kid was sitting right there, and he goes, get ready for, a 4-year vacation or something like that. And he completely answered her question, but once again, I can't recall. Anyway, long story short, you said, understand, know, and have confidence in how you learn. That is so deep. Now, when you're talking to candidates to come work at LeadSpace or any of the other companies that you've spearheaded. What are you looking for? Like, does that play a role into, who, how you talk to these people? And can you recognize that quickly? So I guess, what are some of the characteristics you look for when you're interviewing candidates?
Obviously, you go through the resume and what experience do you have that's applicable and stuff. But at the end of the day, I want people that are emotionally mature, that are very self-aware, that are what I would characterize as intellectually agile, meaning, and it depends a little bit on the job, but ultimately, I, I will say I recently interviewed somebody who was very senior, who spent the entire interview talking about themselves and what their own career needed at this stage, and I had no interest. I mean, I'm interviewing you to understand what you can do for us. Like, what do you bring to the table? And those elements. I mean, especially, pardon me, in a smaller company. I think as you get into bigger companies, you can get greater levels of kind of expertise and focus. But in big companies, you want people that can contribute a lot in a lot of different areas. And you don't. I mean, candidly, I really don't care how talented a person is. I don't want to spend time, paying somebody, a lot of money and then babysitting them. I mean, I don't really get the point of that. And this is not a commentary about the baby boomers or the X generation or any of that kind of stuff. It's on a person by person level. I want somebody who's self-aware, knows how they learn, and knows where their blind spots are, and is comfortable with that. And having a level of self-confidence without arrogance, I think, is really important. And then high EQ, because you're going to be challenged. I tell everybody every day, like this, and I'm shocked how many people struggle to understand this. And this also comes back a little bit to, what do I wish I knew? But as you become more and more senior, the importance of having clarity in your own personal values becomes more and more important. And the reason I say that is, as you become more senior, you are challenged in an increasingly complex and dynamic way to violate your own values. You're asked to make decisions and take actions that are not consistent with your own values. And if you do not have clarity of those, you'll second guess yourself, first of all, and you'll never be able to look back and say, yeah, well, I made the right decision at the time based on these dynamics that are important to me. And maybe it didn't work out great, maybe it worked out great, but you have to have clarity of what those dynamics and values are, because if you don't, you're going to be all over the map. And I'll say, and this, it's different for everybody, but making money isn't my number one value. And there are leaders out there where that's their number one priority or value. And so they're going to do whatever they need to do to make sure to accomplish that. And that's okay, because as long as they're making decisions that are consistent with that, regardless of the other stuff, then they, shouldn't second guess themselves. But, again, it depends on the level of seniority, but at that intellectual agility and the ability to move quickly between, kind of 30,000 feet down into the weeds, different responsibilities, understanding really clearly and tightly what your values are, and then also being able to, I think, adhere to those in a way that you can express that's going to be valuable to the company is really, really important. And the final thing I'll say on that is, can you solve complex problems? And I say this to people all the time, but the only way I got to where I was is by helping solve complex problems. Nobody's going to pat you on the back for jumping companies back all the time. And honestly, I can see all the problems in the business, and people come to me and they're like, oh, we got this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. And I'm like, yeah, great. What's the solution? Like I need and I want to work with people that bring solutions. And it may not always be right. I may not always agree with it, but it doesn't
Being part of
matter.
the
Like
solution.
people who are just naming the problem, they are part of the problem. People that are bringing solutions and ideas to fix things, they're part of the solution. And you only have one of those two choices, part of the problem or part of the solution. And I don't care how big or small of a company you have, every company has
Yep.
problems and solutions. And I do have a hard
You know, I
stop.
was thinking about the next question that I was going to ask you, and it
It's a
revolves.
customer meeting, so
Okay,
I have to
okay, no problem. We'll speed up here. But I was thinking about the next. Yeah, no doubt. I was thinking about the next question that I had for you about how you as a CEO motivate your team. You know, obviously you don't hire people that need to be babysat. The clarity and dynamics, values, and how they learn. You're hiring people that are self-motivated. You're hiring people that are problem solvers, as you indicated. So yeah, it probably doesn't take too much motivation from your end because you've already hired the right team. Um, what advice can you give our listeners? Work, life, entrepreneurship.
yeah,
What advice can you give?
I'm sorry,
to our listeners?
it's not complicated. It's actually pretty simple, and it is work hard, seek to constantly figure out how you can add value and solve problems for the business. I mean, you have to take care of your own responsibilities for sure, but what can you do to help other people around the business? You know, I at every level of a company, I try to ask myself, and this is especially applicable when you go through big economic downturns and stuff. How am I, Alex, making this a better place to work for my coworkers and a better place to do business for the customers? I try to ask myself that every day. And the reason I came up with that was when I was in sales management, you know, it was like in '02, kind of right after the big, bubble burst, and salespeople were struggling. And, yeah, you got to sell, and that's part of your core job. But everybody in the company was trying to figure out, how do I feel like I'm adding value at the end of every day? Because salespeople weren't closing the deal every day. Product people weren't releasing a product every day. But how every day can I ask, can I understand success? And like that is to me the simple formula to know, am I adding value every day? And the way that translates is there was a point a number of years later where there were rumors about layoffs. Somebody came into my office and was like, "Are you worried about the layoffs?" And I said, "No." And he's like, "Really? Why?" And I'm like, "Because I genuinely believe that I can answer the question that I'm adding value here. And I'm doing that with a level of self awareness that I think is elevated. And so if they can't afford me anymore or don't want me to add that value here, I can take it to another company. I'm not going along for the ride. I don't think these guys owe me something. They're paying my paycheck, but I'm trying to make them better. And if I stay focused on that, it's applicable anywhere.
It's amazing. Hey man, I don't want to make you late. A Breath of Fresh Career is not the show that's going to make you late here.
LinkedIn is always the best
where
place.
Can our listeners
I'm very active
best
on LinkedIn, as you know. But just, Alex Yoder at LeadSpace. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
Okay. I'll put links to those in the body in the write up here. Dude, I really appreciate this. It's great to reconnect with you.
Thanks,
good luck on this
It's
call and
pleasure.
good luck as the CEO at LeadSpace. I look forward to staying in touch with you, Alex. Thanks so much, Bob. All right. Take care. Bye. You still there?